This video is sponsored by Squarespace. What if your biggest hurdle in miniature painting isn't your paints, your brush, or even your skill, but instead that you're misusing this one free ingredient that most people don't even think about: your water. Now, this isn't about filtered or distilled, hot or cold. It's far simpler than that. How does your water interact with your brush? Today, we're talking about one of the most important steps that I almost never see talked about: the importance of using a damp brush while painting. Let's start at the beginning. Today, I'm painting this adorable cat on my Waiata bust from Bold Miniatures. This project is perfect because painting fur texture requires perfect paint-to-water ratio, correctly thin paints, and detailed brush control. But first, why do we even need to use a damp brush while painting? In short, paint sticks to dry bristles, making it difficult to apply to our model. The secret to solving this problem is quite simple: water and/or paint thinner. The perfect amount of water within your brush and properly thinned paint allows your paint to flow off your brush, smooth as silk, and ready for anything you might want to paint. While we paint the base coat, let's touch on paint consistency. Each paint brand and even paint color will have a different consistency out of the bottle, meaning they will require different amounts of water or thinning agent to get to the proper consistency for painting. So you'll have to test each paint on your hand until you get used to your specific paints. How do you know if your paint is too thick? First, attempt to paint a straight, thin line using a light hand across the entire back of your hand. If the brush skips, you have to use pressure, or you can't make it that far, the paint is too thick. Second, you can check for plow throw. Using a firm hand, drag the brush along the back of your hand. If there are raised edges on either side of your paint, the paint is too thick. Once you've determined that your paint is too thick, I like to add water or paint thinner half a brushful at a time, until I get the paint flowing off the brush while maintaining as much opacity as possible. This is an easy measurement to remember and helps me keep from wasting paint and/or thinner medium. If you want to learn more about paint consistency, check out this video here. However, there is one important thing to note. Since paint consistency and using a damp brush are intertwined, the best way to test for your water to brush ratio for your damp brush is with correctly thinned paint. And the best way to test for correctly thinned paint is with a damp brush. This can make testing for these elements difficult. Unfortunately, it all comes down to experimentation. Keeping your brush wet is the secret to simpler, more effective painting. Just like how Squarespace is the secret to building a standout online presence. With Squarespace's new design intelligence, you can have a great website using cutting-edge AI tools in just minutes. Plus, with additional great features like Squarespace Payments, which allows you to handle all your transactions in one place, drag and drop web page elements, print-on-demand features, and beautiful photo galleries, you can achieve just about anything with the Squarespace website. When you're ready to start, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, use code LYLAMEV to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Alright, let's work on the texture of the fur and the brush routine. Start by dipping your brush into water, twirl it against the side of your cup, and then lightly dab it off to the side on a paper towel. The goal is for the brush to be damp, not wet. We'll talk about the problems of using a wet brush later. I'm dipping the front 50% of my paintbrush into one of my base colors, loading the front half of my brush with paint. Loading the brush more than halfway could lead to paint entering the ferrule, which causes the brush to split. Next, I twirl the brush, pulling it along the wet palette away from the puddle of paint. My goal is for the brush to have a perfect point while also removing excess paint, which could cause difficulty with brush control. When I run out of paint on my brush, I repeat the same loading process. You should notice that your paint goes a lot further, and you don't have to load your brush as much as before while still getting a smooth application of paint. Next, I'm starting to work on the fur, which means dozens of tiny, fine lines. Therefore, my brush and paint consistency need to be perfect. To test, I like to do the line test and the dot test. Now, we've already done the majority of the line test, but I like to push it a little further by making rows of tiny brush strokes, exactly like we would do with the fur. Once I'm happy with my test, it's time to begin layering up my fur texture. I'm starting by applying a highlight color, painting the fur one clump at a time, following the general shapes of the fur sculpt, then lining in the shadows to help the fur look more dimensional. As I apply increasingly lighter highlights, I focus these strokes on the most prominent curves of the fur, making each successive highlight layer narrower than the previous one. For the brightest highlights, I incorporate white, which desaturates the color, enhancing the illusion of highlights. While adding yellow to orange areas of fur or pale brown to the darker sections of fur adds color variance within the fur, which is important, it's the desaturation from the white that convincingly portrays highlights. For the smallest of details, like pupils of the eyes, catchlights and gems, or here, tiny freckles on the nose, I like to do the dot test. The dot test is the pinnacle paint consistency / water brush ratio test. Therefore, I only use the dot test for select circumstances. 99% of the time, you don't need your brush or paint to be this perfect. For the dot test, load your brush as you would normally, and then make a line of small dots. Again, the paint should come off the brush at the slightest of touches. If you're unable to do the dot test, it could be that the paint is too thick, that your brush isn't wet enough, or it could be that the paint has dried on your brush before you even got it to your model. No matter what, a quick fix for this is to dip just the tiniest bit of the tip into your water cup. The capillary action will suck water up into the brush. And again, you can try testing this on the back of your hand to see your new consistency. However, this last resort should not become a permanent part of your paint routine, as it's unpredictable how much water will get sucked up into your brush when you dip the tip into your water cup. Therefore, if you have to do this technique over and over, revisit your damp brush routine and see where you've gone wrong. If while executing your test you have the opposite problem where the paint suddenly blobs off your brush, that means that either your paintbrush was too wet or you overloaded your paintbrush. Dab it off to the side on a paper towel and try again. Alright, that's it from me. If you like what I do, you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe. You can buy literally anything from the Amazon affiliate links down below and I'll make a little bit of money. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.